The next stage of our header is to add this featured image, which is the background which we see here. Later in the course, we'll also allow this to be changed in the WordPress dashboard for better control by the user. First, we're going to go ahead and add a new section and still within this header element. So let's locate the closing header tag. Then we can create a new section. This section is going to have a Bootstrap class of container fluid. So to lay out a page in Bootstrap, we use a series of containers, rows, and columns, which uses the CSS flexbox under the hood. There is a container class, which groups the content into a responsive pixel width container, which leaves a gap on the right and left-hand side of the page. And we will look at this alternative soon. Or there is this container fluid, as we've just used here, which provides a fluid container which will stretch to 100% of the available screen width. With either type, it can be used as a reference to center and pad our content inside. Nested inside this container, we add a class of row. Rows allow us to nest content inside and size the content by using columns, and we'll look at this very soon. But for now, we're going to go and add our row. This is going to be a class on a div wrapper. Inside here, we can add our image, which is going to be the background image, which we've seen before. The image source is going to be from the So let's go to our surrounding row, which is just here. We can add the Bootstrap position relative. And this is exactly the same as going into our CSS and setting a relative position. But this way it's just a Bootstrap class. And then Bootstrap takes care of adding all the CSS which we need. If we save this and then reload, open up the developer tools, we see the position relative class has added the CSS position value of relative, and then Bootstrap has also added importance on the end, just to make sure that nothing overrides this. Next, we need to set the text to be a position absolute. So in the div which surrounds our p element, a class of position absolute. This should now move the text, if we reload the browser, over the top of the image. Setting the text to be a position of absolute will take the text out the normal flow of the web page. It then positions itself to the closest relative container, which is our row. The next stage is to center this text in the middle of the image. Let's do this by going over to our row, which is just here, We can set the display type to be flexbox with d-flex. We can also set the flexbox value of justify content center, which will align the content in the center of the main axis. Save and then reload. This leaves us halfway there. We've now got the content in the center horizontally. Now we just need the vertical alignment too. And we can do this by adding one more class to our row. This class is align items center. Over to the browser. And there we go. So positioning like this used to be a lot more difficult before Flexbox. But the align items center property will align our content now on the cross or opposite axis, which gives us perfect horizontal and vertical alignment. One little tweak we can make is to set the text to be centered too. At the moment, it's all aligned to the left of the container. Again, we can apply this to our row just after the align item center. We can add text center. And there we go. We can now finish off this section with a little custom CSS. We already have a custom class of header image, which we'll use now. Now let's add one to our surrounding text div too. So here's our text, and in the surrounding container, after position absolute, let's add feature-bg. This will be used to add the surrounding box. If we go to the finished version, which surrounds the text, so it can be read a little bit more easily over the image. This background will also be 60% of the container on larger screens, and then jump up to be the full width on smaller screens. So let's get to work over in the custom CSS. The first step is to set the image to be a max width of 100%. We can then use the feature-bg class to begin to create our background. The background is going to be created using a RGBA color, so we can give it this nice transparency we can see here. So the four values is going to be 255, 255, 255, and then the fourth one is for the opacity. So I'm going to set this to be 30%, which is a value of 0.3. Oops, and make sure this is a dash. Okay, now onto the width. The width is going to be 100 VW for the larger screens, which will span the full width of the browser or the viewport. The border radius of 10 pixels. Give this a save. Open up the tab and reload. And not much has changed there. I think we just need to save the index for the custom class. Give this a try. Good. Now let's make this a little bit bigger. We have a surrounding div of feature text. So let's grab this. The font size is going to be 2 rems. Also the line height, let's increase this to be 4 rems. Reload. Okay, good. The next step is to add a minimum height to our header image. Let's scroll down to the header underscore img. All we're going to do here is set the minimum height of the image to be 25 VH, meaning the image will always be a minimum of 25% of the viewport height. The last thing to do in our CSS is to create a media query. If we take a look at the finished version, to make the width for this background 60% on the larger screens. So at media, let's target the screens. We can also match up our breakpoint with the Bootstrap breakpoints. So the minimum width of 768 pixels. We're going to grab the feature BG and set the width to be 60 VW. So on larger screens, the background will be 60%, and then on smaller screens, the background will be 100%. Save this file. Over to the browser. If we shrink it down and close the dev tool so we've got more space, The background and text for our small screen is the full width, and if we increase the screen space available, this now drops down to be 60%, which is exactly what we wanted. This is it for our header now. Just quickly before we go, I want to show you the difference between the container and the container fluid. Currently we've set the section to be container fluid. If we just set this to be container and then reload, this makes the container a fixed pixel-based width, meaning there's a white space on the left and right hand side. Whereas container fluid, which we had before, will stretch to the full width of the browser. And we'll make more use of these containers as we go through the rest of the course.